Right. 405 forces is basically a good model to analyze the industry's attractiveness. Okay, so is that under macro or micro environmental analysis? Look, that is fine. Yeah, that is fine to me. If you put it under macro or micro, it's okay. Because in my personal view, we should have another section named industry analysis. Okay, and 405 forces is quite suitable actually for this kind of case. But I just don't want to bombard people with with more concepts, and I'm fully aware of that. So yeah, look, if you use it, that's great. Okay, that's great. If you can use it, that's great. Okay, just on that 405 forces, if you select to use 405 forces, please focus on the your analysis towards the assessment of each force, whether they are high, moderate, or low. Let's say rivalry, the buyer power, okay, supplier power, threats of substitute, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so please focus on whether they are high, low, or moderate. Okay.
Well, I probably wouldn't use.
Say it again, sorry?
Primarily because it's a fiction.
Say it again?
I said I probably won't be using it simply because it's a fictional company, so it's sort of everything's an assumption, so rather than actually be backed up by facts, so I probably wouldn't use that.
Well, not necessarily. You can look in terms of rivalry, for instance. You can still substantiate it using the current industry, using the industry background. Let's say if they are in retail industry, then you can have a look the rivalry of that industry. Okay. Yep, it is a short case study where you can use your own reasonable assumption, but it's not going to be full assumption. Threat of supplier power, for instance, is another case. You can look at who your suppliers are, roughly, if you're in that industry. Okay. Right. So hopefully that gives you a bit more, a bit more information. Let's discuss this topic, and after that we'll come back to that one. I don't think it will take long, and I plan to have 15-30 minutes discussion on the assessments. Is that okay, Ed?
Yeah, of course.
Yep, brilliant. Right, look, just briefly about the sustainable marketing. There is a strong call for companies to adopt the sustainable marketing, and the concept of sustainable marketing actually includes two issues. The first one is being environmentally responsible, and the second one is being social responsible or ethical. Okay, the reason for that is because we want to ensure that whatever we can enjoy today can be passed on to the next generation. So that includes the issues of sustaining the environmental the environment that we are in, that we are using, because we want to ensure the environment can be also enjoyed by the next generations. Okay? Now, beyond that, we also want to ensure that the system that we have built now can be developed or can be passed on to the next generations, basically. So, for instance, the capitalism system that we built, that we discussed some time ago, can be developed and also can be nurtured, developed, and also be passed on to the next generations, basically. So we want to build a business environment where everybody, all stakeholders, have trust in us. Okay, you may recall a business named Lehman Brothers some time ago who should file bankruptcy because they spread their own capability to absorb risks. Okay. Doing certain tricks in their office, and as a result, they had to lay off 3,000 jobs at a time. But it's not only about laying off 3,000 jobs as the main issue. The other issue, which is larger, is basically the investors at a time may lose trust with the capitalism system. Okay. Now, in the capitalism system, like what we have now, we actually we may be the owners of companies through superannuation system, like the one in Australia, for instance. Okay, where our money is invested to companies, and if we lose trust in the system, well, it may be a huge meltdown. Okay, so that's the a bit of introduction why we discuss about briefly about the sustainable marketing. Now, the first thing that I'd like to introduce is the term ethics. Well, it is actually moral principles that guide us whether we do something good, bad, or right or wrong. And unfortunately, it is always not easy to discuss whether something is good or bad, because the regulation that we have may not be enough to cover everything to say good or bad. Okay, that's the reason why we also have to have what we call as the social tastes. Okay, right. So that's basically a bit of ethics. Now, again, if I show you some examples in here, doesn't mean that it is an offense to anybody. Okay, it's just for our discussion. There are three issues. Issues that I'd like to discuss in terms of from ethical perspective, or impact of marketing to the stakeholders. The first one is impact of marketing to individual consumers. That's one that we're going to discuss next. And impact of marketing to society, and impact of marketing to the other business. Right. That has become a kind of concerns from some groups of stakeholders. Okay. All right. So impact of marketing on individual consumers includes these areas: here, high prices, deceptive practices, and so on and so forth. There are 6 items in there. High prices is because marketing has been accused of driving the price quite high with the advertising costs and also distribution costs that will be passed on to the consumers. That will escalate prices of the products, and marketing organizations will pass them on to the consumers. Right now, the marketers would normally claim that, well, yes, it drives high prices, but it adds value, because without the advertising campaign, consumers will not be able to find our products. Right? We learned it in the consumer behavior as well, that advertising and the other marketing information becomes a source of information for consumers to make decisions. Distribution also adds value, because that will allow the customers to access the products. Okay? Deceptive practices. Some marketing organizations have been accused of being deceptive in their practices, such as telling something, but they do the other things. And here, marketing organizations claim that, well, we have to adhere to the regulation, and we don't want. The purpose of marketing is to maintain relationship. Okay, it's not only to get one to sell one unit. That's it. And what we intend to build is the sustainable relationship with the customers. Deception is not in the equation. Okay. High pressure selling. You may feel that at some point of time during dinner or when you are enjoying your weekend, you receive phone calls from telemarketers. Or anybody trying to sell something to you. Well, that's high pressure selling. Again, the key point in here is marketers always say, well, we want to build long-term relationship. It is not going to be irritating anybody. Okay. Surely harmful or unsafe products is another issue that people raise. Well, it is against the law basically, but some products we may find some products quite difficult to to avoid in terms of harmful. Well, therefore, businesses like companies like McDonald's, for instance, how do we place them in terms of marketing concepts? They actually, consider the environment. If you read the some articles that you may be able to find that they have been adopting the renewable energy in their production process, which is basically looking after the environment. Okay, but again, you could also argue if they adopt a societal marketing concept, because the product is probably, some people may argue the product are harmful to people's health, basically. Okay, so and again, the counter argument for that is, well, look, you provide the product, but you know, we also need to look after ourselves, basically, right? Like any other products. Okay? Planned obsolescence is another issue where marketers have been accused of planning to delete certain products, although the products are still working well. Okay, well, Microsoft, for instance, announced a few years ago they wouldn't support XP, Windows XP anymore. Although at the time when they announced it, customers were still happy using Windows XP. Okay? Now they're trying to migrate the customers from using Windows 7 to the latest Windows, Windows 10. Okay, and later on they are not going to be able to support Windows 7 anymore. I think they are actually migrating, in the process of migrating. Although Windows 7 is still, you know, working well. That is something, okay, that people debate actually. And from marketing organization perspective, well, we have to adjust to the customer's need, customer's lifestyle. Therefore, we keep upgrading our product. We keep launching new product. And unfortunately, we can't support all products at the same level due to resources, that we need to maintain. Okay? Poor service to disadvantaged consumers. Some consumers might find it being, you know, offered with, poor service or poor product, and that's basically something that marketing organizations need to take on board in terms of promoting equality, adopting equality in terms of servicing customers. Okay? Now, the second impact is impact on society as a whole. There are three types of impact here that I'd like to discuss briefly. The first one is false wants and too much materialism. Marketing organizations have been accused of creating false wants, so they may buy something that they don't need, basically. Okay, and marketing organizations have been also accused of promoting materialism world, basically. So beyond, so if you look at advertising campaign, for instance, it is more about sex, power, status, and so on and so forth, right? So dragging people away from being spiritual, for instance. Okay, and marketing organizations normally defend themselves well. It's hard to depend on our advertising or marketing campaign, because we just quite not as powerful as it has been described actually. The proof of that is a lot of products out there fail in the market. Okay, and creating too much materialism. Well, we actually try to elevate customers' need to the next level. After fulfilling customers' basic needs, we try to promote that to the next level. To view social goods, whatever we do in business, we try to improve our business performance. So when we sell more, we actually potentially use more public utilities such as roads. Okay, that may create traffic jam and so on and so forth. And finally, the taxpayers will foot the bill to expand the roads. Okay. So that's the other issue. No matter business that you're doing, either car business that aims at selling more cars, or any business that you do, you are actually using public utilities. Okay, and some countries like London and like UK, for instance, and also Indonesia, in the key cities like London and Jakarta, they try to implement price tag when we pass certain busy roads, for instance, in the CBD. Okay? The last one is cultural pollution, where again advertising campaigns basically have been accused of focusing on the world of materialism, such as sex, status, power, okay, that kind of world. And marketing organizations argue that, well, look, without our advertising campaign, the media will not be for free for the audience. And because of our advertising campaign, we make media to be possible, to be available for free for the audience. And media is also useful for consumers, as an entertainment and also as a source of information. Okay. Now the next one is marketing impact on the other business. Well, when we grow the business, we actually increase the barriers to entry. There you go. This is as you started our conversation with the 4 or 5 forces, and one of the things in 4 or 5 forces is threats of entry or barriers to entry. Okay, so when we do our activities, either advertising campaign, launching new product, okay, expanding the distribution, and so on and so forth, we actually increase the barriers of entry. Therefore, we are actually blocking new entrants to come into the industry, or we may make the other players getting threatened by our activities. We like it or not. Okay, so it may harm the other companies and reduce the competition as a result. Okay. And marketing organizations claim that, hang on a second, well, in our system, the system that we believe, allows us to get the reward. Remember the capitalism system that we discussed some time ago? Allows us to get the reward of servicing the customers better. And because of that, because of freedom of competition, we actually evolve what we offer, the service and product that we offer to be better and better because of the competition. Okay, remember the logic behind the innovators. Basically, they introduce what we call as the creative destruction. When we introduce something, we destroy the previous thing. Okay, so we can elevate to the next level. So with that, we actually say, let the companies who can service the customers better win the game. Okay. And the other thing that may be also an issue is acquisition. Okay, because of our activities, we're getting larger, and as a result, the other companies may become smaller. Okay, and that may result in the acquisition of a business by another business. Okay, now. Acquisition is not that simple actually to discuss from ethical perspective, because from volume perspective, the acquisition will result in a larger volume of the company that acquires the other business. Okay, and if the company has larger volume, as a consequence, the company can have may be able to produce a more cost-efficient product. So it should be cheaper because they have a better capability to manage low-cost structure in the organization. Therefore, they should be able to provide with a cheaper price for the customers. Okay, so that's a good side. Now, the bad thing is not all companies will do that. Okay, it may not happen. The companies pass on, the saving to the consumers. All right. Okay, so that's there are the ethical consideration in the context of sustainable marketing. And now, look, this is just again a brief example where as discussed before, it may be an offense to anybody, or we can also say that ethics is basically beyond regulation. It also includes our social ties basically. This is a billboard in a church of a church in New Zealand, and from the advertising standard perspective, there is no pornographic imagery in here, right? So they proved it, but unfortunately, the local community there say, "Hey, hang on a second, it is not our value. It is not, it doesn't reflect our value." Okay, finally, they pull the billboard down and replace another one. And surprisingly, the new billboard that they use, shows Mother Mary with pregnancy tests showing positive. Anyway, that's an example. There are a couple of examples, basically, in terms of ethical debate. Okay. Right, now let's discuss the marketing research briefly. After that, we discuss the assessment again. And now there are a few things I'd like to highlight in terms of marketing research. First, we discussed this model that shows micro and macro environmental forces. Okay, from marketing research perspective, everything in here can be researched. Okay, everything in here can be researched. Okay, the customers can be researched, marketing intermediaries can be researched, and so on and so forth. Okay. And the other thing I'd like to introduce is the concept of customer insights, where it actually reflects a fresh understanding of the customers. Okay, so a new lens of understanding the customers, basically. Okay, in terms of what? In terms of their needs, in terms of driving them to purchase a brand over the other brand, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we understand it better. Okay, that's a MIS concept, which is basically a concept that involves people, procedure, and procedure to assess the information needs and also fulfill that information needs through distributing the information to relevant stakeholders. All right, now to gain the insights, okay, there are three sources of information that we can use. The first one is internal database, and then competitive marketing intelligence and marketing research. Now, the internal database in here actually includes a number of reports. Okay, our financial report like sales and profit, customer feedback, and also the CRM, customer relationship management. Okay? And then competitive marketing intelligence includes the competitors' annual reports and so on and so forth. Okay, and sometimes you can get the information about competitors by listening to their announcement to media, for instance. Like the one that Apple tried to manage a few years ago. Tim Cook, the CEO at the time, was challenged by the stock analysts in America. Well, you've been doing a good job. Now you have new opposition. Your opposition from Asia attacked you into front, larger screen and cheaper price. What are you going to do about it? Well, he didn't answer that question straightforward at the time, but people interpret it as they would launch something cheaper, and they launched an iPhone 5C at the time. And the reason for that was to address Chinese market at the time. Okay, but anyway, so we can learn about our competitors from a number of things: their annual report, announcement, exhibition, their marketing mix variables. Right, that's the reason why. In your competitive analysis, I also encourage you to look at the marketing mix variables to understand what they are offering. And after we understand what they're offering, we should be able to understand what value that they're offering. Okay. And then the next one is marketing research, which is basically the key focus that our discussion in this topic. Okay. Actually, everything in here can be researched. The target market that we want to aim at, okay, the positioning, okay, or the product that we want to develop, okay, the distribution, and your business decision, okay, whether your direction of the business, such as opening a new store or building a new factory, okay, being, because you want to compete in certain category, they can be researched basically. Right, now marketing research process is another topic I'd like to discuss briefly with you. It starts with the defining the problem, and then we develop the research plan, and then we implement the research plan by conducting field research, and the last one is to interpret and report the findings. Okay, in my experience, defining the problem is probably the largest one that we need to handle, because it is not that simple. We conduct research not because we have the marketing dollars to conduct the research, but we do research because we want to solve specific problem so that we can make decision. Okay, the decision that we make should be quality decision, and quality decision requires information to support. Okay, and therefore it is normally the biggest challenge when it comes to preparing research. Okay, and now the other thing I'd like to highlight is, in terms of defining the problem, is basically a lot of people confuse between research problem and business problem. Okay, when I look at certain work, for instance, I found that my research problem is basically my sales is declining. Well, let's in the first instance, let's differentiate research problem and business problem. Business problem is related to performance of the business. Okay, and how do we measure the performance of business? As we discussed some time ago, it can be sales, it can be profits. Okay, so when it comes to sales and profit, it is about a business problem. Okay, so what about research problem? Research problem is actually about the information that we are lacking of, and we need to find them. Okay, so that's the research problem. Okay, so let's say we have an issue, sales trend. Okay, we have declining sales trend. Okay, sales, we didn't achieve the sales target, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what do? Well, yeah, copy our CV and apply for another job. Okay, well, let's hang on a second. We are hired to solve the problem. Okay, let's adopt that. Okay, let's adopt that philosophy. Okay, first of all, we need to understand how to convert these business problem into research problem. Okay, and the first thing that we need to answer is basically, why is it declining? Okay, is that because we are losing customers, or is that because if we lose customers, definitely our sales will decline? Okay, or is that because the customers consume less? Okay, or is that because a customer switch to another brand? Okay, now let's say that's because we can't retain the customers. So we are losing customers indeed. Okay, so that leads us to questions about the customer satisfaction and also customers loyalty. So there are a couple of possible research questions that we can ask. Okay, the other possible questions would be around whether our product quality still meets the standard or not. What about our perceived product quality compared to our competitors? Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea in terms of converting business problem like sales trend into research problem or research questions. Okay, and we have three approaches of research: exploratory research, descriptive, and causal research. Exploratory research basically focus on defining the problem to suggest research, further research. And normally we use qualitative study like focus group discussion or in-depth interview. And the next one is descriptive research to describe the issues. And here we actually say we use quantitative study. And the last one is causal research, which is trying to find the cause and effect relationships between at least two variables to test hypotheses. Right? And we developed a research plan. In terms of developing research plan, we decide the types of data that we need to collect. Here, I'm not going to discuss this further because I believe we are all familiar with the secondary and primary data. Okay, but the ones that the Abyss World report that I published, that I posted, basically helps you with the secondary data analysis. Okay, primary data is basically customized to your research problem, while secondary data is basically not customized. And then in terms of technique, we have qualitative and quantitative research techniques. The qualitative research techniques involve small number of individuals that includes focus group discussion, in-depth interview, and observation. Okay, the outcomes would be in words or opinion, or sometimes pictures, depending on how the research is conducted. If we show pictures to a group of audience in the focus group discussion, we can get the information, the context of pictures as well with analysis. And the next one is quantitative. That involves a lot of people, more than 100 normally. And normally they also use statistical tool such as a mean score, for instance, or so the outcome would be in numbers like stats or percentage. The popular techniques in here include survey and questionnaire. Okay. Right, I'm not going to discuss about the secondary data. And again, this one here, Abyss World report, I hope you find it useful. Have you got a chance to look at the Abyss World report, guys?
Yes.
Yeah? Does it help in your analysis?
A lot.
Right, brilliant. So please have a look at it. Have a look at it and go through it. That helps you with the environmental analysis. Okay, macro, micro. Okay. Right, and in terms of data collection, that's the one that we discussed before. We can also include the mystery shopping for primary data collection from qualitative perspective, for instance. Okay, so where we pretend to be customers and interview people, interview the customer support team. All right, so next thing I'd like to discuss briefly is the data collection. How do we contact the customers? We have mail, telephone, personal, and also online. Well, now online has gained a strong momentum because from cost perspective, it is excellent, and response rate is also good in terms of reaching the right respondent. It is also good, okay, compared to mail. Well, if we receive questionnaires on mailbox, very likely we may we may forget it, or we may not bother about filling out the survey unless we will be penalized, such as census survey. Okay? In terms of online, we can also do online research for focus group discussion, not only survey, but also the focus group discussion. Okay, so we can also use Zoomerang or SurveyMonkey. Now, these two companies have merged to be one company, actually. Okay, now the next thing that we need to decide is the sampling plan, and that includes 3 decisions: sampling unit, which is basically about who or the respondent profile. Sample size, how many to be included, and the last one is sampling procedure, which is basically how should we choose the sample. Okay, so we have a random sample such as John, Robert, Claire, Sue, and so on and so forth. Why do you have to select John, not Robert, for instance? So that goes back to the sampling procedure. Okay. In terms of sampling procedure, we have 2 techniques, probability and non-probability. The probability here actually follows the statistical rules. So everyone basically has the non-chance of being included, and non-probability with non-probability, the sampling error cannot be measured. Okay. Now, right, I'm not going to discuss this more details in terms of probability and non-probability, but briefly, the random sampling technique actually allows the population to have a non-unequal chance to be selected, and we have evolved that to stratified and clustered sampling techniques. The stratified actually improves the precision of the sampling techniques, and cluster actually helps us to reduce the costs by looking at the area. And non-probability includes number of techniques such as convenience, judgment, quota, and also snowball sampling technique. Snowball sampling technique is normally used by companies if the respondent is hard to find. So they get one respondent, and after they finish the interview, they ask this respondent who is the next team that can be interviewed. Okay, right. So that's basically the research topic. Okay, can I suggest we now discuss the assessments? Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Guys, I have been advised that we may we only have a few minutes left for this session. Can I suggest we stop the session and click the same link again, so we have longer than just 5 minutes? Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Brilliant. So let's discuss the assessment. Yeah.